Hi there, welcome to part 2 of this series of videos on building a pedal board from scratch. My name's Steve Bullock, Guitar Moog. As I said in part 1, building a pedal board from scratch is one of my really favourite things to do. In part 1, where we're at is that we've got the board prepared in terms of the layout we're going to use. I have the wiring schematic clear in my head. I have the ergonomics worked out of where I want the pedals to go on the board. We've fitted the power supply to the bottom of the board, as you can see on pedal cam here. And now we're going to populate the board with the pedals according to the plan. We're going to wire up the power and we're going to wire up the signal chain. Let's crack on. You'll see that we laid this out we laid this out pretty carefully before we even put Velcro on the board here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through. I'll fast forward through this quickly. There's just a couple of hints I want to give along the way. One of them, probably the most important one, is instead of using, which I said in the previous video, is instead of using Velcro on the pedals, I use one side of Velcro, the soft carpet bit, the loop side on the board, and then I use something called Pedalboard Tape, which I believe is 3M's dual lock, and this gives a really great attachment. And you don't need to, it's quite expensive. I think it's €10 a meter, so it's not cheap at all. But you really don't need very much. You don't have to cover the bottom of it, because when it grips, it really grips. So you don't need a lot. And there's another tip about this, which we'll get to in a bit. But I'll get the pedals on the board now. Okay. As I said in part 1, it's a really good idea at this point to position them with cables in, or at least use those as a guide if they're getting all tight together. Saves disappointment later. But I'm actually going to take them out as I do it, because we're going to need these cables. But we know that goes there now. It's the wrong one. Should have been the booster. And that bit all fits, which is a blessed relief. There we go. Right. Next step. Okay, now here is a quick tip. You'll be able to see on the pedal cam here that this switch, which is the switch for the amp, that goes to my amp to control the tremolo and reverb, is not making great contact here, despite having, if anything, too much tape on the bottom. And that's because you've got this piece here, which doesn't have any of the hook side Velcro. So always keep any offcuts you have of it left over. Generally they supply, just enough, and a tiny bit more to cover the pedal board. I've got this little square left over, so I'm going to cut this square to the right size, and it's going to go into this gap here, because I'm going to need some adhesion there from this pedal. There we go, one little patch, and now this should stay very easily there. Still not great actually. This has been on and off boards a lot. What you can do is if you find this dual lock starts to be ungrippy, it's sometimes it's got bent and a little bit clogged up when you've used it many times. It's too expensive to throw away at €10 a metre, but if you scrape it a bit, a nail or a screwdriver, you can get it back into action often, I find. Let's get that on there. There we go, yeah, that's not bad. Could still be better actually, to be honest. I might replace the dual lock on that. We'll see, because I'm a bit short of it. I think that needs to go round about there, I think. Don't want to be... Let's go here. Right, here's a tip and trick. So this Super Duper 2-in-1 down here, straighten that up, is sitting in the second row of pedals, and it's not a very high pedal. It's pretty low. Now I already have this switch topper on top, because this side stays permanently on, so I don't want to be foot switching that. I want that left, and when I go, that's permanently on as a preamp. This one is the booster. So this is the one that I'm going to be hitting while I'm playing. So that's why I have the topper on it. Now, what you'll see if I hold it up is it's still quite difficult to get to that. I'm still going to have to get my foot over these knobs. I don't want to be changing the settings on these knobs with my foot every time I go for that. So we're going to lift that up. Now there are a few options for lifting pedals up. You can use pedal risers, which are these things, which are made by Pedal Train. They're really good. They go under a pedal and lift it up at the front. These can be really good. I'm actually going deliberately for a pretty low profile, not too packed board here, so I don't fancy using them. Although they're very good. You can get them in a pack with one to fit 3 pedals, one to fit 2 pedals like this. And the ones with more than one pedal have holes in the middle to run cabling in, or you can get them in singles like this. I use these quite a lot when I'm building or adjusting pedal boards. You dual lock them on the bottom, you see there, and they're not going anywhere once they're pedalboard taped on. They'll stay there. There's no structural integrity issue with them whatsoever. They won't move around. These are really good. They're well worth it. I expect €30 for a pack of 3, or you can buy them individually for 12 or 15. I really like them. They're really good. I'm just not going to use them on this board because I want everything simple. I'm going to use it first to see if I've got the ergonomics right before I make any changes. So that's where we're here. You can also get one of these. Now I can't remember who this is by. I think this might be from T-Rex or Rockboard. I'm not sure, and I'm sorry if I haven't got the brand right. And this is a flat one. These are really useful when you just want to raise a whole pedal up rather than angling it. You'll see here though on the board, they were a bit short space here. These are great if you want to do a whole row higher. These are really excellent. If you want to do an individual pedal higher, well, it would work for that one, and we might even use it for that. That's not a bad idea at all, but it's not going to work just for one pedal slotting in there. But there's another trick you can use. So as you'll see, we've got 2 strips of dual lock pedalboard tape on the bottom of this already. And one of the nice things about it is that it's quite thick, so it already raises the pedals up a little bit, which I think is useful. But what you can do is you can add 2 more layers of it. If you stick 2 pieces together like this, you can then get another 3 millimeters, maybe 5 millimeters up off it. So I've got a couple of these already made, which came off a previous board where I'd done this to lift things up a little bit. And I treat these as permanent thing. You know, these are completely reusable things. So I'm not going to chop them up because they're the right length for a pedal. I'm just going to stick these as extras on the bottom of here. And yeah, you won't even see them really. And voila! So you can see how much higher up the pedal's going to be lifted now. It's going to be much higher up, and that is probably just enough to get it over the top of. Let's see. Let's put it in and see if it is high enough to get it over the top. Right. Well, that's going to be much easier to get to. You can see here that we've got a bit of clearance, a bit of the topper is now sitting above the height of these, and we can get a toe in to get to that. This one I'm not going to lift up. It's not really used very often, but I am going to put topper on that at some point when I work out where they've gone. And in fact, you know, this isn't such an issue because we can move that back. We've still got room for cabling here, and then the foot switch is, you know, almost in between pedals. So you're not going directly over the top of the pedal. So that'll be okay once we put a topper on it. I can't see where the toppers are, but I'll find one during the course of this and put it on it. Hopefully a nice green one or purple one to match it. Okay, so there we are. There's the basic layout. This is what we're going to start with. Obviously the exact layout can be moved later, but we know that this should work, and we can start with the cabling. Right, so we're going to do the power cabling now. You'll notice, the first thing you'll notice is that we have a power supply, the Steinhardt Zoomer, that has 9 500 milliamp outputs. And you'll notice that we have more than 9 pedals requiring power here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And actually, it's 12 if you include this box, which needs power for the LEDs to work. I quite like having the LEDs working. It's not essential. The nice thing about this though is that you can run this as a daisy chain of whatever else is going into it, because the power doesn't go anywhere near the signal chain. It's literally just for the LEDs. So it doesn't harm the power signal, the quality of the power going to any other pedal, and no other pedal harms the quality of sound by this being powered or not powered. It makes no difference whatsoever to the sound. So we can run a second daisy chain off that, so we're down to 11 pedals. Now, some of these definitely need all of the power output. The Plethora specs at 600 milliamps. I found that it works fine with a 500 milliamp output of the Zoomer, which is fantastic. That's cause for celebration. But we're not going to be using anything else on that power output. Definitely not. It'll put it running properly in jeopardy. The other thing that's extremely high power is the Boss wireless system. This needs 350 milliamps. So you're not going to want to run anything else particularly critical or high current off this. Yes, we've still got 100 milliamps left. Also, this is digital. This is potentially going to put digital stuff into the power system, interference and so on. So we don't want that. So that needs to be isolated. So there we have 2. So that leaves us with 7 outputs to power 9 pedals, which obviously doesn't quite work. But certain things don't really care whether they share an output or not. And what I've found is that the 3 pedals that require 18 volts, which is the EP booster, the SL drive, and the Kali 76 have no difference if they run off a daisy chain with each other or not. I've tested this, I tested it on an old board, I listened for the noise floor, I listened to the sound of each of them from isolated outputs and sharing a single 18-volt output, and there was no issue. There was no issue with that. So if you take these out, we then have 6 outputs, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pedals, and then we'll daisy chain one of them to give a bit of power to the LEDs on this foot switch. Now, the benefit of having isolated power is huge. That pedal show did a fantastic show entirely on powering pedals, so I won't go over that. The ideal is for all of them to be isolated, and I'm actually a little bit tempted to run the Kali 76 separate from these two, and maybe daisy chain these 2 pedals here. I'm not going to do that because the June 60, as I said in the previous video, is going to be a guest slot when I can get the chorus sound I want. Basically, if I can get it pretty close to that chorus sound out of the Plethora, this will come off the board, and this will become a guest slot, or maybe it'll stay on the board until other pedals arrive, and this will be a guest slot to put other pedals into. So I want to have isolated power and the full 500 milliamps there, because I have no idea what pedal is going to go in that slot in the future. The pareidolia, again, this will come off the board if the X5 updates have a really good harmonic tremolo in them. So this is not necessarily permanent. So I'm going to give this one, this can also run on 18 volts, so I'm going to give this the other 18 volt output. If anything changes, the Kali 76 will get its independent output. So that's where we are now. Okay, so let's flip over and start the wiring. Right, so here's the board upside down. We've got the power supply. The other way around, the front of the board is here. I don't know if you can make out what's going on under the board from having seen it before, which on the top of the board, but I'll keep you updated as we go. Right, now, when you think about wiring, I like to do the power wiring first, because it tends to be the simplest. You need to get the power from the power supply to the pedals. It's not interconnecting between pedals generally, apart from when you use daisy chains. So it's good to get that first, and then work out how to run the signal cabling. But we know some things about the signal cabling. One of the things we know is that there's going to be cabling going to and from the Plethora, because we've got the effects. We're using the effects loop, as I talked about in the first video. For, in fact, all of the other pedals after the wah-wah will be using that effects loop. So we know that. We also know that we have this long front row of pedals which are all connected to each other. Not necessarily to the adjacent one, but nonetheless they're connected to each other. So we know that we're going to be running power cables horizontally along here. So what we want to do is for the front row, what we're going to want is the power to come out of here and go straight across, and then be distributed along the back of this, along the back of this bar here. And what that does is it keeps the signal and the power supply and the power cabling away from one another. You can run it parallel. You can run them parallel. When I first read or saw that you get a quieter board if you don't run signal and power in parallel, and in fact make them cross. Make sure that they cross at 90-degree angles whenever they do have to cross. I have to say I was pretty skeptical, because we're running at 9 volts and 500 milliamps. It's small voltages and small currents. So I didn't really think too much of it. Obviously for mains power 240 volts, that's different. But yeah, I didn't really think too much of it. But then I built a board and just because I had the opportunity to and the time, I decided to build it like that, and it was, well, I rewired the board, I should say, and it was, unfortunately, to my lasting regret, noticeably quieter, which was, I have to say, really irritating to find that it was true. And the board that was being rewired wasn't a particularly noisy board. It was fine. It was perfectly usable, but it was quieter afterwards, in my experience, with exactly the same pedals and exactly the same power supply and exactly the same cables, but run so that the signal and power aren't in parallel, and making sure that they cross at 90 degrees wherever possible. So it's best practice. It's not necessarily necessary, but you know, none of this is necessary really, is it? You could just take a guitar and plug it into an amp and turn it up and have a great time. But we have a great time doing this as well. So since we've got the time and I have the energy, we're going to do it that way now. So the first thing is, let's get the 18-volt ones out of the way first. So we're going to use this furthest output. I'm going to switch that to 18 volts. Now we know that the only things running at 18 volts will be coming off this. No, that's not true. We're going to run the pareidolia at 18 volts as well. So those are the two 18-volt outputs set to 18. So again, should probably do this on something soft, really. Like I say, in an ideal world, you would have everything isolated. I would prefer it that way as well. 1, 2, 3, and we need a short power cable on the start of that. Yeah, I would prefer if they're all isolated, but we don't really quite have the luxury of that. They do an extension for the zoomer, which powers from the zoomer, and it's a little five-point extension, Uja I think it's called, which is really great. And if you wanted to do it all absolutely all isolated, that would be a really great way of that would be a really good way of doing it. But it's a bit more money, and we're going to see how this is. If this turned out to be very noisy with a couple of daisy chains we're using, then maybe I'll order one of those. It'll be worth it. Right, so those 18-volt ones done. Now we're going to do the rest at the front, and we're going to, when we decide what we're using, we're going to measure it carefully to make sure that we have enough length to get them over at the same point and then running along. So we're going to have one bunch of cables coming across here, and then they're going to be running along and branching off to here. So we've only got 2, I think, to do here. Find the right ones. Yeah, that looks fine. And that's an 18-volt one, so we don't want that. Sorry, I just realised that I got this wrong. This is why you have to check twice all the time. I put this in the JHS kilt, which if I turned it on to 18 volts it wouldn't like. This should in fact be here in the compressor. Now, for this one, we're going to use this daisy chain, plug it in, and we're going to go into the reeves of frat sits here, and then on to the little switch where we're just powering the LEDs. So this is a really utility daisy chain. It's not going to make the slightest bit of difference to any signal or anything. Right, so that's power on the front row. Now to get to the others. Now I see also that the this expression pedal is falling off, so that means we haven't done the. Basically, you should be able to lift this up upside down and have nothing fall off. And the fact that this is falling off means we haven't got the Velcro right, the pedalboard tape right, and you can actually see here that there's a bit showing here. So we're going to take that off and we're going to move it. We're going to move it back. We must remember to do that. Now, I really do like these flat power cables. I don't have quite enough of them to do the whole board in it, which is a little bit annoying. I'm using some on a different board. They're really good. They're really, you can see on pedal cam here, they're really low profile. And the really good thing is that because the cable is flat, apart from not getting so tangled, you can do a little trick, which I'll show you here. And the trick is that if you've got a pedal up on a couple of bits of pedalboard tape, you can run the power under a bit that doesn't have the tape on it, and it won't affect its sticking power. So you get some really lovely sort of neat connections there where it just appears underneath it. So I really like them because of that. I think it's really great. Now, see what we're doing here. What we're doing here is we're trying to get things going on a common track. So we decided that there's going to be power along this rack. There's going to be signal along here. There's going to be power going across here, and this will be tidied up here together, so we can make it nice and neat. So we know this one's 18 volt because it's going from this 18 volt output, a switchable output, but we know the switched outputs are at 18 volts. This is very handy. So it's going to be a bit harder to tuck in nicely, but we'll do our best. Of course, you can use solutions where you cut the power cables to length as well, and that's I have to say, that's very attractive. But it tends to go with systems which are very expensive, very, very good, but very, very expensive. And yeah, I'm yet to be 100% convinced that it's quite necessary to go that far. I have no problem with high-end power supplies. I think they genuinely do make a difference. And if you're going for something really good, then they are worth it is really, really worth putting the money into a good power supply with high output, low noise, and isolated outputs. The isolated outputs are very important. But sort of modular ones, I'm always it's just a personal psychology thing. I don't really like things where you buy a system and then you have to pay more. I don't like in-app purchases. I don't mind buying an app. I can't abide in-app purchases. I'll pay for the app and then purchase it. I don't like rental of software. I like to buy it. I decide to buy it. I bought it. It does it does it. I get updates. I hate coming across a feature and thinking, oh, I'd really like that, but it's not worth. I don't want to spend £5 on it. I'd rather make one decision, and then having to wrangle over that decision internally. I'd rather make one decision than work with it. For other people, it's totally different. They really like a modular system. But, you know, once you build up a decent sized modular system, you're maybe getting to, you know, well over 300, 400, maybe 5, maybe 600 euros, depending on what different types of pedals you can use and so on. And they are the best systems. And if you're touring professional, and you have the money for it, and it's an absolute no-brainer for mission critical applications. I'm not quite there for various reasons, as I said. Right, now this should be the last one. But the nice thing about it is that the nice thing about doing it that way is that you don't get very long bits of cable, which you then have to tie up. Exactly the same as why I like cut to length patch cables, actually. Right, voila, all the power's plugged in. What you'll notice though, is that it all looks a bloody mess from the top. And that's because it's a mess on the bottom. So the next thing is to begin to tidy it up on the bottom. Now you can't do the full tidy up, in my view, until you've got the signal cables in as well, or I find it very difficult to, but we can begin the tidy up underneath now before we move on to signal cables. So I'm going to flip it over again. There we go. Now, to keep it all tidy, I have been using these very clever little standoffs, I suppose you call them, which stick on, and then you can put cable ties, you know, the thin plastic ones, through, run cables through, and then pull them tight. The problem I've had with this, the problem I have with that system, is really neat. It gives a really, really neat result. It's really great. You can run things in both directions. Really, really excellent. But every time you want to change something, you need to clip the cable tie, throw it away, and put a new one in. And I don't really like doing that, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of that, of having stuff that disposable at all. It's also a hassle. You can't get stuff out quickly when you need it. You have to run things, you know, back and forward through it before you tighten it up. And yeah, so it's not. It's a really good solution from a technical point of view, but it's one that I don't like doing for other reasons. My other board has it, and it works great. But for this one, I'm trying something new from looperwork.de, who have all sorts of helpful switches and gizmos and board add-ons and stuff, all made very, very carefully out of the best stuff by one really nice guy out in Germany. He sells these, which are obviously Scotch, 3M Scotch branded, and what they do is you put cabling through them, like this, and then yeah, sorry, haven't used these yet. It's the first time I've used them. Put the cabling through them, run that in, pull that tight, and that's releasable. Okay, I don't know if you can see that with the light. I'll tilt it so you can see it better with the light, maybe. And then you can remove it by giving it a pull and pushing it back through. So these are totally reusable, and I'm hoping that these are going to be a really good solution for this. So we have 3 tracks really of power cables going on here. We have one for the front row, we have one for the plethora, and then we have 3 for the we have the front row, the middle row, and the plethora, and the 3 over here. Let's do this front row first, see how nice and neat and tidy we can get it. So this is where you need to plug and unplug these at this end to make sure that you get it running how you want it. Now you see, so we've got a clump coming together nicely here. So we'll put one under there, one of these under there, and just tie it loosely. And that's the start. Well, that's looking better already. Now I assume that we're going to be able to clip off the ends of these with scissors as well, so I'm not going to worry about the tails too much for now. Okay, now I'm not too worried about using too many of these because firstly, I bought an absolute bundle of them, but also these are going to be useful whatever the future of this board is. These aren't going to cease to be useful, they weigh nothing, they're completely reusable, and as you can see when I try to take one off, they're really stuck really well. So no issue there with overusing them in my view. And in fact, I think I'll put one here. Would it need it? Yeah, that can flap. I'm going to put one there. That might come in handy with signal stuff anyway. Right, so you can see that this is looking a little bit neater. It'll look better from above. See if we can tuck that in a bit. That's a little bit annoying. Could do with that being neater. We'll see when that's locked down, whether it, yeah, maybe that'll stay under there. Don't like having stuff too visible from the top if we can manage it. Right, so now we'll do this end. So we just have three power bits here. All going in roughly the same direction. So we'll pop them on here and back round, and then you won't see a thing apart from them appearing from behind the wah pedal there. You'll see me changing where they go in the power supply as we go along, according to how the lengths happen to be convenient, all apart, of course, apart from these two, which are 18-volt outputs, so they aren't changed. And this kind of shows the advantage, shows what I like about this power supply. I don't have to look at it to find out whether that output is going to work with that pedal. I can switch any of them around, and if these were switched to 9 volts, which on many pedal boards they would, you can simply use any, and this makes things more convenient. It's a bit less to worry about. Now all I needed was a little bit more length so that I can make that one neater later, and voila, there it is. I like these things. I'm happy with them so far. We'll see how they are when they clip. I'm not sure they're going to be just as good when they clip, but we'll find out. Basically just want the least visibility on top of the board that you can here. Right, that's nice and neat. This one probably doesn't even need a tie down there, I don't think. No, I think that's fine how it is. This one certainly doesn't. That's completely fine. Right, so I'm going to take a little break and we can move on to the signal. Right, I had a bit of a break and now we're going to do the signal cabling. Now, one important point here is testing cables. Very, very important. Do it now, take the time to do it while you're doing the board anyway. Saves a lot of hassle later, and you know that you're starting with everything in fine shape, which is how you want to be. Now, I have a cable tester. I have a really excellent cable tester that tests every kind of cable you can imagine, including USB cables and Firewire cables and mic cables and everything. It's downstairs, can't be bothered to get it. And also, you probably don't have a cable tester, or you think you don't, but you do, because if you're building a pedal board, you almost certainly have an amplifier. Now, you'll have noticed the noise that your amp makes. I'll turn this on. When you plug your cable in, and you probably don't like it, but there's a very easy way to see if your cables are working. Plug one in, little patch cable. Touch the end. I'll turn this up so you can really hear it. Touch the end. Signal. Which then changes when you grip the tip and the ring. So you know it's working. You know the tip and the ring are isolated from each other, because otherwise touching them together wouldn't make a difference. You know that the signal's flowing there. So that pretty much means the cable's working. Somebody can write in the comments why it doesn't, and that you need a cable tester. And yes, I'm not going to give a 100% guarantee that the electrical theory is perfect enough for that to definitely mean that your cable's working. That's the closest you're going to get to a cable tester without buying a cable tester. And you know, I don't actually use my cable tester very much, and it was quite expensive, and I could have probably bought something more fun with it. Sorry, electricians. If you're doing a lot of electrical stuff generally, it's great to have a cable tester. You can also do it with a multimeter, which you might have, and is super useful for household stuff and for rewiring guitars and all that kind of stuff as well. And you can do that with a multimeter, and you basically check the tip and the ring are isolated again, and then you check the continuity of the tip on either end and the continuity of the ring on either end. I normally use the highest ohms setting on it, if I remember right. This might be wrong. If it's wrong, correct me. Please correct me. I'm not an electrician and wouldn't claim to be. Right, now where'd that little patch cable go? So we're going to use two types of patch cable for this. We're going to use these EBS flat cables, which I really like, but you can't cut them to length. They just come in standard lengths, and like everyone, I've just got a hodgepodge of lengths. But when they come in handy is when you're really, really, really stuck for space. And there's one place that I've noticed that we're going to be really stuck for space on here, and that is between, I found a bit of the old drill that I broke yesterday, drill bit. One place that we're going to be really stuck is here, where the wah, or the wah pad, butts up very close to the wireless system. Ideally, we don't want lots of overhang off the board, not just because it doesn't look good, but because it's got to go in a bag, and if something's overhanging the board and anything hits it from the side, it's not going to hit the side of the board, it's going to hit the side of the pedal first. So we don't want that if we can avoid it. If we can't avoid it, we'll have to live with it. That's the way things are, but much better to avoid it if we can. Now, the first step in the signal chain is this. It is from the wireless's output to the wah pad. Now, using these extremely flat cables, yes, we have just enough left there for it not to be overhanging on either side, and for it still to be really easy to get this out without any fouling it, without fouling any of the cabling or anything, and that's not overhanging at the front. So that's a win. I'm very happy with that. Now, so from this, from the wah, we go to the plethora. And then all of the other pedals on the board are in the effects loop of the Plethora. And as I explained yesterday, that means because you can insert any 5 effects from the TC Electronics tone print range into any slot on this, and you can move the send and return of the effects loop to any point in between any of the 5. This means that things like pitch benders, whammy effects, univibe type effects, if I want extra compression, these can go before all of the drive pedals, and then the rest of the board, like delays, reverbs, and other modulation stuff, can go after the drive pedals, and it doesn't take up a slot. You can have a switchable effects loop if you wanted to have an extra pedal switchable using this. You could do that, but that's a different approach. That's using this as a loop switcher. We're just using the loop facility without using any switching attached to it. So on all of the patches that I use on this, that loop will be always there. Even if it's at the beginning, that's another thing. You can put it right at the beginning as well. You can have nothing before it if you want to, which is excellent. So, now I have a little bit of a thing about pedals having the same patch cable on the input and output. And I know it's really stupid, but I do have it. So now that we've used a flat one on here, I'm going to use a flat one on here, because I don't mind so much if the Plethora has different cables on the back, because it's going to have the input cable going in there. It's already got a power cable, so I don't mind that so much. And actually, it might be useful to identify which ones go where. So when you're selecting your cable and making the cable, just remember to leave a bit of extra length. So you think, okay, well, that's way too long for this, right? Way too long. Where's it got to go? It's got to go to the input of the Plethora. In fact, this is way too long. We'll use a shorter one. Let's use this one. And you think, well, that's way too long because the input's there, the output's there, but it's got to go underneath this Tune 60. It's got to get up here, and it's got to get round, and I may even put it under and appearing out of the corner here. So it's not just a question of getting the distance between the pedals right as the crow flies. You've got to go around all the obstacles in the way as well. And if we make, we'll probably have to make a cable. In fact, I will make a cable to show you how to do it, to make one of the Boss ones, which are which are custom. You can build to your own lengths, and I'll show you how to measure for that when we get there. For now, though, what looks like a big pedal, we don't even have to flip it over. We can just take this off here. As ever, I want cables to just disappear under the board and not be seen apart from the plug. That's always the ideal that I'm looking for here. So we can go under this Tune 60, because we're using the Pedalboard tape which lifts it up, we can go right under there, and we can tidy that up later and you won't see that cable at all. So we've got from the wireless input to the wire pad, and then into the Plethora. Now we're going to come out of the Plethora and go through all of the gain stages as we go. Now here you can see that as the crow flies, that cable's nearly long enough to come out of the output, but it's actually nowhere near long enough once it goes around. So we need a much longer one. I think that should do it. Yeah, so we're going to plug this in to the out and see if this is long enough. And if it's not, we might trim it. Here's the insert send. Now, what we don't want to do, which I see that some people do when they have pedals at the back like this, is to run the cabling under here. Again, when you put it in its case, it's going to get impacts there. And actually, we'll move this back when we're done to make sure that there are no plugs sticking out over the edge of the board there. Now, but you can see when we want to go under, how do we go under? We're going to have to go all the way along here. Can we fit? Maybe we can have it just disappearing under it. Let's try that. Voila, again, the benefit of the Pedalboard tape here. that there's just enough clearance to get that stuck back on with the cable going really directly under it like that. And that's super neat, and you'll agree you can't really get much neater with cabling than that. So that's great, and it avoids having to run cables all the way along around the edge of it, which is one of the occupational hazards of using big all-in-one pedals like this. No, sorry, I've got this wrong. There you go. I've just made exactly the mistake I was talking about of thinking that everything has to go in a linear fashion through the signal chain. Of course, what I've forgotten is actually the Cali 76 is the first in the chain. So maybe we're going to be left with two longer cable here, but we may need a long cable later, so I'm going to see if we've got a better one handy. If we haven't got another one handy, we'll make one. Good way to see how you're doing for cabling lengths. Hold them all at one end and pick the one that has the right length. Don't worry about the pedals moving about while you're doing this. You're going to reposition everything at the end. You just need them in close to the right spot for now. For now, let's have a look at what this bit of cabling has done to our overall plan. Right. There you go, you see? You have the power cabling here, you have one power cable running here. Now, when we tidy all this up, we'll be able to have that crossing at 90 degrees there, we'll be able to have that crossing at 90 degrees there, and the crossing where it crosses over between the bars, it'll be under a pedal, so it'll be nice and neat looking from the top as well. So you get that the cables just disappear effect when you look at it from the top, which is what we're looking for. I'm not going to put that down now. We'll do all that at the end because we may be using some existing stuff as well. Right, next. Right, so we have a dilemma here. But we either have a really long cable, almost length of the board, width of the board, or we have this medium length cable, but which isn't quite long enough to get around here, to get where we need it to go. So we're going to make a new one. My judgment is that we're going to only need one really long cable. The rest are going to be fairly medium. So we can lose one of these extra long cables. We've got two, and I think we're only going to need one in the future. That makes it a little bit easier. Now we can just use this. We could just use it as it is, but it's a little bit long, and I want to show you how to make these cables because it'll be interesting. And if not interesting, informative. And if not informative, then it will at least waste a bit of time waiting for lockdown to stop. Now, how do we want to do this? Now we can start looking at now when we're measuring, we can really start looking at where the cable's actually going to go, not just the distance between them. So we're going to want that to come over here, along here, up through this hole. And into the pedal there. Now, as you can see, if we route it like that, we've got a bit of excess on the pedal. It's only a little bit. To be honest, I would live with that. But since we're doing a video demo, I'm going to show you, and I want to show you how to make the cables. We're going to do it to just the right 'with a tiny bit extra in case a different pedal gets put there, say with the jacks on the other side, jacks on the top instead. Now, so we're going to need roughly that much length. So, scissors, make sure that you cut perpendicular, 90 degrees, snip that. Now I'm going to pull this plug out and switch to the other camera so you can see this in more detail. Where's my little screwdriver go? Right, these Boss pedal kits come with this nice little screwdriver, very kind of them, which has flathead on one side and is reversible to Phillips head. Lovely. These use flathead screws. Now you can see that there's a screw on here. Can I get that to filter without touching it? There we go. That to focus. Is that focused? Yes. They have a little screw. Now, so how it works is that you have, just take this apart. The core of the cable has the copper coloured core in there. Can you see? Is it going to focus? Focus please, autofocus. In there, and then it has the shield around the outside. So there's a little pin inside the plug. When you push it in, the pin goes into the middle core, and then you screw the screw through the ground shield. There. I wish I could get this to focus closer. And that's where you hopefully can see where the screw goes through the outer insulation and into the shield, into the ground or shield. There. So to make one, you take the end, which hopefully you've cut perpendicular. If you haven't, it'll be a bit troublesome. Then you want to give it a little roll to make sure it's round, because sometimes when you cut it, it compresses the cable before it goes through it. So you don't want it flat, you want it nice and round. Check, you don't often get it, but there can be a bit of fraying of the shield because the shield is kind of braided foil. So there can be a bit of fraying there. Then you push it in, give it a little twist. Now it goes in until there's resistance, and then you need to push it the extra bit. If you don't feel it going the extra bit, something's gone wrong, take it out, snip the end again, roll it, and try again. But you can tell once you can feel how that extra bit of push feels when you're doing it, you'll know whether it's there or not, and you'll have a pretty good idea of whether it's going to work or not. It's going to be embarrassing because it's obviously not going to work having done that, is it? Let's see. Then you screw the screw in, and it says in the instructions until it's flush. I actually find it has to go a little bit further than flush, to be honest. But don't go and tighten it with an electric screwdriver or put it in a clamp, and give it a good houken, because if you go through the shield, you can then go through to the core, and the core and the shield short out and the cable won't work. Now we can use our 4-watt all-tube cable tester here. Touch the tip and the shield, you get a different sound. So that's working. So now we have a nice custom cable, which should be exactly the right length that we need for this. Now, when I say exactly the right length, I leave an extra centimetre or two in case you change the pedals later and the plugs are the sockets are in a different place, in case you decide to move it around. And also there shouldn't be any stress on it. I mean, we don't want stuff pulled taut. It should just be lying nicely. There should never be any mechanical stress on the plugs. Right, I think I'll fast forward while I do the rest of this. Now this is where we realised that, in fact, we did need that long cable. So we're going to make a new one. And I'm going to disassemble this very short one because we don't have any use for one this short on this board. So same deal, screws out. Now, I always keep offcuts of cable because you can snip off the bit where the contact, where the screw's gone in, and reuse them, but this is probably too short to be honest. But in general, I do like to reuse them. There's a bit, found a bit. So we've got a long spool here. So, we'll see where it's going to go. And route it properly. Yeah, so it can go down. Yeah, we're going to need a really long one here actually. I might even have to clip it. Now you think, why do we need such a long cable for this? Well, we're going from the output of the pareidolia here, and we're going to the input of the June 60. Now of course we want to keep the cables as short as possible, but we don't want any cables running around the top. And then when we look at the bottom, we also don't want the cables running in parallel here. We want to be able to tuck them over with the other signal cables. Here. Yeah. And then we cross at 90 degrees here, under the power supply. I've talked about that we might have to do earlier. And round to the plug here. So we actually need a pretty long cable for this. Yeah, we really do. Is that the input or the output? I always get confused. No, we don't have to go under the... No, it's the input's on the other side, so we don't have... That's good, we don't have to go under the power supply. We just come up here. So we can actually do with a bit less than that. So we'll pull through, what, 3 centimeters of that, and it'll be fine. And then we'll snip it off. Go, that should be great. And make sure. So yeah, we're gonna make a real long cable here. So yeah, so it's going in without much resistance there, and then it goes the extra millimeter, but with resistance, and that should be good. And then screw the shield screw in. Every time I've had one not work when I've built it, it's because it didn't go that extra little bit in. Maybe because the cut wasn't straight and there was a bit of the rubber outer was stopping it going all the way in, or because it wasn't rolled properly and it was the wrong shape. Here's a perfect example. This one's not been cut very well. Let's see if you can see that. See what I can see. Can I get that foot? Yeah, you see that is not perpendicular and it is not straight. Got that little lip coming up at the end. That's going to be a potential problem, so we'll snip that anew. The other nice thing with these is that they can be straight or angled, which I really like. I don't see why you have to... Oh, that doesn't feel right at all. This looks fiddly, but you know, you see there, I didn't have enough long cables. The alternative is to order some long cables, order some long cables and wait for them to come from Tom or Anderton's or whoever. Wait 2 or 3 days. And then find that they're too long or that they're not long enough for what you needed. So I do like these solderless systems, and I've tried a few of them, and this is the one that, like I said, this is the one that I think gives price versus quality is the best. It's not the highest quality, it's not the cheapest, but I think it gives really good price versus quality once you get the hang of how to do it. Now, into a cable tester. Yep. We're laughing. We're laughing, innit? Back to fast forward, I think. Now, yes, what I was going to say about these is that they can be straight or angled. Here you have it just assembled and it's straight. They have this little notch and you can pull that down and it turns into an angle jack. I really like that as well. I always buy angle jacks, but there's just occasionally, it's much easier to have a straight jack than an angle jack. I mean, it's pretty occasional. But for example, if you need to connect something underneath the board, say for a stereo split, or if one of your pedals is on a tip ring sleeve output, actually like the June 60 is if you run it in stereo, it's nicer to have them just plugging straight in rather than having to find a way for them to bend round. And actually, you saw that with the daisy chain power, which was on right angle jacks. It would have been much neater if they'd been on straight jacks. So yeah, just occasionally. What I can't understand is why people who play tellies and 335s and Les Pauls and stuff have straight jacks sticking out the side, because if you put a straight jack in here and then you hit the jack, it's going to either snap the jack or damage the jack socket, both of which are extremely annoying in the middle of a gig, which is when these things tend to happen. So I'm a big fan of right angle jacks. It just convert the right angle over your strap. Of course, when you come to use the Strat, it's a pain in the arse. But I don't use Strats. Even worse on a 335 style guitar, where you have the jack socket on the top, and you have normally a 5-piece laminate top, which can splinter. So if you catch the jack hard, there's a very good chance that you're going to splinter around the laminate wood around the jack there. I think it's a very bad idea. Same with acoustics as well. You see, I really hate to see a straight jack sticking out of an acoustic. You just put it down too hard or catch it, and you've ripped the jack out or done something awful and to your lovely instrument. So I'm a big fan of right angle jacks. Please use them. This is the hill I'll die on, as people like to say. Right now. Now here's the thing, this can just go straight across, can't it? That'll send, that's the return. Why don't we just put that straight across? Well, it's not going to look very neat, is it? I wonder how we can make it neater. Let's see if we can make it a little bit neater. That's pretty neat, isn't it? So that goes back into the return, and then we have the output. Now, you know what? I am not comfortable, I think I said before, I'm not comfortable with that being the main output for the board. I don't mind the second stereo one being, so if I ever do run in stereo recording direct, I don't mind putting the second output from there, because I'm not going to do that very often. I don't run a 2-amp setup. I mean, it's once in a blue moon, and very occasionally when you want a specific effect, I do for recording. You know, if you want a really wide reverb or you want ping pong delays, and also actually the stereo setting on the June 60 is really nice. It's a really nice stereo thing. So there's applications for recording for that, but I'm really not going to do that. I don't like the look of that being the main place to plug in and pull out. So, what do I do about that? So what I'm going to do about that, I'm going to take this, which is a very, very simple in-out box. The jacks are just hardwired to each other in a little box. I've already got some pedalboard tape on it. I'm going to fit it underneath here, there, as the main output from the board. And that also has the benefit, okay, I hope you're seeing this on pedal cam, that also has the benefit that the cable for the switching cable for the amp and the output to the amp are right next to each other as well, and can both be on right angle cables, so you haven't got anything to step on here. Again, straight cables coming out of the side of the pedal board, they're going to get stepped on, and they're either going to pull your pedals off or they're going to damage the jacks, and neither of which you want to happen. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm just going to put a little bit of Velcro there, a little bit of Velcro there, and this should fit onto it really nicely. So in fact, I said I was going to put Velcro on here for that little extra box, but I'm not. I'm going to use pedalboard tape, because when it's locked together, it's tighter than this simply going to the loop side of Velcro. Well, a quick tip when you're doing precision stuff like this, I did that a bit wrong. Let's put that back on. You don't have to put the tape on one side and then push this onto it. If you want to get it really closely lined up, put it on first and then take it off and put it on, and then it should be, you're guaranteed that it's going to be in the right position. If you do that right, which I just didn't, because we need to be right over that side, yeah. Right, so now we peel these off, and we know they're going to be in the right place. Now, the adhesive on this is pressure activated. So if you press down harder, the adhesive sticks harder. Right, and there we go. There we have the little out box on the side, and we run a cable from that, well, to that, from the Plethora output, the left output, mono output. So that means we can still go in stereo if we want to, no problem at all to go in stereo. Fed over there. So we've lost no functionality whatsoever, but we're hopefully a bit less danger of damaging anything with constant plugging in and unplugging. Okay, right, now we're going to have a go at tidying up underneath. Before I do, you'll see that these really aren't sticking very well to this rubber. So I'm going to do a trick which I saw, I'll acknowledge I saw Dan at that pedal show do, and we'll see if it works, which is to take the base with the rubber on it, and instead of peeling the rubber off, flip the base over. So the pedalboard tape is sitting on the metal side rather than the rubber side. Just saw that the other day on YouTube, on the brilliant That Pedal show, which has probably been keeping you all going during all this as well. I really love, huge fan. So let's see if this works. Get the screws out. Six screws, that's good. Yeah, so we have a metal base on the other side. How's this going to work? The only thing is that there's no countersinking of the screws, which there is in the rubber. Let's see, let's try it though. I think the pedalboard tape might be tall enough for that not to matter. And if so, it's a really great tip, because all rubber bottom pedals, I think Dan did it with with a Boss pedal. Was it a Wah-Wah or a Boss pedal? It was a Boss, I think. And yeah, sticking Velcro to rubber bottom pedals is deeply annoying. I remember the day I peeled the rubber, including the original label, off my really amazing 2000s Keeley tube screamer, Keeley mod tube screamer, and put it in a box and thought, oh yeah, well I can just reattach that whenever I want. And of course, you never do you? 15 years later, I go to sell it and I can't find it. But whoever did buy it got very high quality pedalboard tape on the bottom of it anyway, so that's something at least. You know, I think this is going to work a treat. I'm well pleased with this. There we go. I should probably attach new pedalboard tape, but for now I'm not going to because I'm just testing. And actually, I think the adhesive's still good on this. No, the adhesive's crap on that. The adhesive's done on that one. And on that one. Now, I don't have very much left, but you don't need very much, so we'll just cut this into 4. Ideally, I'd use a little bit more, but I need to order some more at the moment. And you don't need that much. But yeah, this is on the verge of too little. I'll give it that. I can't believe I've run out of it, but as you can imagine, I use a hell of a lot of it. So, right, let's see if this is better. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's much better. And thank you very much for the tip, Dan, of that pedal show and the gig rig. Never occurred to me in a million years to do that. I did once replace the bottom of an MXR Phase 90 with an offcut of a Telecaster pickguard, but it never occurred to me to flip over the rubber bottom of a rubber bottom pedal like that before. Right, let's tidy up the bottom a bit. Let's tidy up underneath a bit. So the nice thing here is you can already see how it's working out. You can already see the primary roots. You can already see that they're okay, that they're doing what they should do across power cables. They're not running right next to them, and we can route them all nicely and neatly together down here. Yeah, so let's do that. I'm not a neat person. I find neatness very difficult. Look at me, I'm obviously not a neat person. But as time goes on, I really value, especially having more than one board, you know, if you flip it over and it's a rat's nest, or there's a problem with it, or a cable goes, or you just want to swap out one pedal and you can't remember exactly the order, it's really much easier if they're all neatly put together like this to see what's going on. If it's just a rat's nest, it can be... Oh, I've put that in the wrong place because I was talking. If it's just a rat's nest of cables, it can be really hard to figure out what the hell's going on when you need to do something like that. And that stops you doing it. And you know, if you've got an idea, you think, that's it, that's what I should have been doing. I should put that pedal there. You want to be able to go and do it. You don't want to... Things have got to be easily accessible. It's like keeping guitars in cases, you know? People say you should keep your guitar in a case. No, if it's in its case, you don't play it. Keep it on a wall or stand or, you know, whatever. It's more important that it gets played than that it stays safe. Pointless. It can be as safe as you like, never played. Who cares? Who cares if it's safe then? Right, I think we're done. Right, I think we're done. I think that's pretty neat. That's probably about as neat as somebody who is as neat as me is going to get it. So I'm fairly happy with that. Almost every crossing. There's one little snarl up here where there's a bit of a clump of signal cables and a clump of power cables. I would have rather got that a bit better. I do have to admit, I would have rather got that a bit better, but you know, there we go. You can't have everything, unfortunately. Other than that, I'm fairly happy with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to test it, and then we'll flip it back over and we'll tighten it up. We have some power. There we go. Haha. Right. Two things I forgot. There's always something to forget. The first is I haven't hooked the finish this power test. Right, well, everything's got power. Yeah, everything's showing up there with power, so that's great. Before I do the signal test, I'm going to finish the wiring. And for most expression pedals, you need a tip ring sleeve cable, TRS, or stereo cable. And it's called tip because it's TRS, tip, ring, and sleeve contacts, all of which are insulated from each other. So it can take a stereo signal and the ground. So this goes out of the expression output of this. And we'll go into the expression output of the Plethora expression input. Now, here's the cool thing about these cables. Because it's not carrying any signal, the audio, it's not a volume pedal, the audio doesn't go through the pedal. All it does is it sends a voltage down one, and the voltage is then controlled by the expression pedal, and the voltage goes back to the other contact. Contact's not the right word, is it? I can't think of the right word. Anyway, other pole. So it really doesn't matter if it goes over power cables or anything like that. There's almost nothing you can do to destroy this signal. So we've got that expression pedal hooked up, but there's also another one because we have this the red remote foot switch JHS remote foot switch for the JHS Kilt version 2, which I'd totally forgotten about. Again, this doesn't carry any signal. Stick it in wherever's neat is fine. And we'll have a look on the bottom to make sure these aren't just gonna catch on anything later, or, you know, sometimes you put the board down on a rough surface and then it gets moved and you can snag cables and stuff that way. So I want to make sure I can't do that. Okay, that's not bad. I could have maybe with cut to length power cables we could get it a bit neater. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's neat enough for me. Maybe it's not. Maybe it shouldn't be a never-ending quest for neatness. I don't know. Anyway. Right, so we can give it a test now. Yes, the tuner does work. So what this tells us is that if there's any problem after that, it's between the plethora and the amp, because there's obviously a signal going to the tuner here. I like the tuner on the plethora. It's huge. Huge. You're not going to be squinting at that on a stage, are you? Massive. Ah, no, of course, we're using the effects loop. So the fact that it gets to the plethora only tells you that it works between the wireless, the wah-wah, and the plethora. It doesn't tell you anything after that, actually, because then it goes out to the loop. Now, rather annoyingly, how embarrassing. Right, I'm going to take a little break and then we're going to do troubleshooting. This will be instructive. Okay, well, I found what the problem was. The problem was that, as you can hear, we have signal now. The problem was that the power cable was not in this correctly and it was turned on. And you'll hear what happens when you do that. It's true bypass, so if you pull the power cable out with it turned off, it doesn't matter. If you turn it on, obviously it cuts everything. But, so, I actually want to take this opportunity to give a bit of a tip on troubleshooting. You put your board all together, you think it's going to be great, you plug it in just like I did, it doesn't work. No sound comes out. Now, we already knew that there was no problem with the wireless, there's no problem with the wah, no problem with those cables because it got to the tuner on the plethora here. So, if it's getting to the tuner, we know that there's a signal going through. Okay, we might have a problem with the quality of the signal, that's a different question. We deal with that differently and later. So what do you do then? There's no sound coming out of the amp. What do? Well, you test each of the cables, and instead of going in the direction of the signal flow from the guitar to the amp, you go back, you go from the amp, because it's the easiest to test. Test the cable from the amp. I'll turn this up so you can hear it better. Touch the tip, then touch both the tip and the sleeve and it changes. Sound when you touch the tip, different sound when you touch that. This shows the signal and that these two are isolated from one another because you're unisolating them when you put your finger on. Otherwise it would be the same sound, the sound wouldn't change. Right, and then you go backwards. So where's next? The output of the plethora, you pull that out, you do the same thing. That's fine, no problem there. Then we go back from the effects loop. Effects loop out, the effects loop return. The last one in the effects loop is the June 60. That's fine, although getting rather a lot of digital noise, which, yeah, let's hope that that's not an issue later on. And so on and so on, you keep going back. And with each pedal, you also check that the power's on, you check that you power it on and off. Another way you can do it, if you want to, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find out which stage of the signal chain we're at. So, for example, if you've got a trem pedal and you want to know whether the signal is getting between the trem pedal and the amp, most pedals will give some self-noise. So, here's the trem pedal, turn the volume up, you can hear the trem going in the background noise there. Back to more where I'm going to use it. Same with distortions. Turn the level down and the distortion up. Turn the level up. If you're getting that noise, that means the pedal is connected to the amp. If it wasn't, it wouldn't make that noise. So those are two ways of troubleshooting which I always find helpful. Right, so we're going to give one last look under the board. We're going to tighten up all of those standoffs. We can turn the amp off and unplug this. See the lovely sight of all of the lights on. That's another thing I really like about, I hope you can see it here, about the Strymon Zoomer, in that you can see if there's a problem with any one power outlet there. That pleases me. I like that. On a dark stage, you can also see green light under the board, which is lovely, of course. Now, the other thing with pedalboard tape is when you shove it down and give it a little wriggle, it sticks tighter as well. Now, I haven't done that to any of them because you got to move them to get cables in and all that kind of stuff. So let's tighten all these up. Oh, I really like this system. Well done, looperwerk.de for getting these to me and introducing me to them. Cracking work. Now, I'm going to clip off the excess of these, but we might need them to be slightly longer in the future, so I'm not going to take off all of it. I'm just going to take off most of it and then bend them back, I think, so that they all stay reusable. Voila, okay, I think we're finished under here. There we go, there's the bottom of the board. Finished, I think. Right, flip it over. Get everything nice and wriggled down and settled on its fixing system. Nice and straight. That cable's gonna irritate me, I think, as it kind of already is. So that might be something to change when we get around to it. Right, there you go. Everything's straight, everything nicely locked down. Now, you probably didn't believe me when I said I could pick it up by the pedals. So, let's see if it's true. I hope it is. It'll be a bit irritating if it isn't. There you go. Okay, I'm not picking the whole pedal board up, but I am lifting it up by two pedals there, and it's not light, I can tell you. Right, let's see how it sounds. After all, that's what we're in this for, right? No, nothing again. It really is that. Yeah, we have a problem with that. I'm going to have to do something about that input socket. That's not working great. I have no idea how this will sound. I'll do a proper demo of it in the studio with proper sounds and take you through how I think I'm going to use it and what the different sounds are. This is a quick preview of that. going on here? Aha. Right, that's great. Everything's working nicely. Looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to take it down to the studio and give it a proper test drive through my normal amps and with them properly mic'd and stuff. We'll be back for that in the next bit. Thanks a lot. I really hope you're enjoying this. I really hope it's informative and useful. I know it's very long, but I wanted to do it completely in depth. Not stuck to a format, not limited. If you want to do this, I want to go through every single stage, including the mistakes, because they're important. So I hope you're liking this. Obviously, subscribe to the channel. You can listen to my ambient at bedtime stuff. There's a playlist that has probably just popped up. And go off and please listen to my band, the Vanity Drones, for some ambient indie pop as well. Links below. Links to everything are below. Links to all the equipment, all the kit that we've used to this are all below. I hope it's been useful, I'll stick an extra part in with the outcome in terms of sound, and give it a run out for you. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.